Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with comics creator Ron Root, and this is like a powerful angle on you right now. Like, I feel
Very,
small and insignificant.
very dramatic and in your face.
That's right. That's right. So I came across your work through the interwebs, as they're called, through the social media outlets, which I think is, as I was saying before we hit record, maybe the best thing I do on social media is just looking at cool comics and art and storytelling, and then checked out your website. And so I know that you have a history in the video game industry and currently doing comics art as well. So curious to talk about all of the things.
All the things. That sounds great.
Yeah. So what connected you with comics initially? What made you go, yes, comics is a space I want to create in?
Well, for me, I started, reading comics at an early age, like a lot of us did.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was always an artist growing up as a kid. I was always drawing, I was always doodling, and things like that. And so it was kind of a natural medium for me to explore. And it was a way for me to kind of tell stories while putting images in there with my own skill.
Hmm.
And it was just a fun way to express myself at that time. And over time, and as I've gotten older, it's been a great medium for me to kind of express new ideas, express new stories, and those kinds of things. For me, I'm a big fan of history. So I
Hmm.
do a lot of reading and studying and things like that. And so I'm constantly listening or reading all these stories and things like that. And I've always wanted to see a lot of that in sequential,
Yeah.
whether it's comics or films. So for me, since I'm not a director, unfortunately, this is the next best thing. I still get to direct, I still get to plan the layout, the story, and everything like that. But it all applies to sequential comics.
Yeah, love it, love it. I'm a English teacher by day, so connecting with reading and literacy and reading history, you're speaking my language totally.
Wow, awesome, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So curious about the links for you between the work you've done in the world of video games and sequential comics.
So, in my experience with games, I've been not a comic artist, but a concept artist for video games in the past, and that's been a great experience for me, and it's very, very enjoyable. I've always wanted to be a part of that industry, to
Hmm.
where I get to um, basically tell these interactive stories, which is basically what video games are all about.
Hmm.
But it's a lot of it is some of the writing, and so for me, getting into like either video games or tabletop role playing games, which is kind of what I'm doing right now. It's an opportunity for me to explore those worlds, explore that side of the art. Because I've been a big fan of all the D&D stuff back in the '80s, and so it just kind of felt natural for me.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
it's something that I've always been passionate about, whether it's some sort of gaming platform and art. I think the two go hand in hand. And so for me, it was just kind of a natural fit. So that's kind of where it came in, at least for me. So
Yeah,
it's interesting.
yeah.
It's very challenging as well.
Oh, I imagine so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything in particular you'd want to share about the challenging aspects of it?
Yeah. So, as an artist, when you're working on these projects, you're basically given like a script or a paragraph or something or a descriptor, letting you know what you need to illustrate or the
Hmm.
need that need to be met. So, you got to rush and meet these deadlines for one, but you want to make sure that you're giving the best quality of work for two, and that's kind of where like a lot of the challenges is time management and level of skill within that time frame. But some of the other challenges is trying to pull those ideas from those pages and putting it into a visual context that the owner or the creator sees in their head. So
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
trying to like read minds and trying to figure out or pull out those details, those descriptors of the characters or the scenes or the feel, the mood, and likewise, for what their needs are. But for my tabletop role playing game experience, um, since I do a lot of comic illustration, for me, I do a lot of the character work. So a lot of props, a lot of characters, design, monsters, and things like that. And that's just like the most fun you could have, right? It's just
Hmm.
drawing cool characters, cool monsters nonstop. And then on the side, you get to put it into a sequential storyline where you could see it with a story and things like that. But with games, it's a little bit different because you don't see a lot of the end result. You're pumping out content and you're creating and you're constantly moving forward.
Hmm.
And so I think for me, that's kind of where the two kind of meet is my experience in drawing, my work in tabletop role playing games and other video games, and then combining that all into a comic format at some point for myself. So I think
Nice.
that's just it is just the best job in the world for me.
Cool, cool.
Yeah,
I'll take a question in here if that's okay,
yeah,
and you can pass if you want. Um, Thinking about the number of students I've had over the years that have played video games, talked about being involved in the world of video games, any sage-like advice that you would offer? You have the beard of a sage, and so I
yes.
thought this would be.
So I get this question a lot, actually, from a lot of aspiring artists.
Hmm.
And one of my first pieces of advice, especially for young budding artists, is to constantly draw.
Hmm.
Always
Hmm.
be drawing every day. And it's a discipline. It's a talent, but it's also a skill. It's something that needs to be constantly honed. So by practicing all the time, that will give you a great edge. And don't just draw superheroes and characters. If you're trying to get into the gaming industry or if you're trying to get into the comics industry, you need to be able to draw those other tertiary objects like telephones and not just cell phones, but like the rotary stuff and
Hmm.
digital and analog, and just start drawing a lot of the more mundane stuff: lamps, doors, buildings, landscapes, you know, inanimate objects, those kinds of things. I also do like nature illustrations to kind of help hone my skills. So lots of birds and plants and animals and things like that. So
Hmm.
I would recommend starting there. Constantly be drawing, be out in the world, draw everything that you see, and just constantly practice. Another piece of advice that one of my teachers given me in college was don't just look, but observe. So,
Hmm.
and this really became a handy tool for me when I was doing a lot of landscape work. So, for example, like drawing clouds, you know, don't just see the clouds as shapes, but look at the clouds and observe all the subtle changes, the subtle tones in color and shape and depth.
Hmm.
That will give you more of your going from a 2D to a 3D feel in your illustrations. Um, Another piece of advice I would give is network. Talk to other artists, get out there, put your work out there, ask for feedback in a kind way, and then take that feedback, whether it's in negative or positive, just absorb it, find
Hmm.
out what you need to change in your art to make it better, and so on and so forth. And so I think that is probably one of the harder aspects for artists. We all like to
Yeah.
get down there and draw, and the whole day goes by, weeks, months. You don't get out of your cave. The same can be true in social life for artists. So I would encourage artists to connect with other artists, especially those in the industry that you're trying to pursue.
Hmm.
So if you're like, hey, I really like gaming, video games, so I want to tackle this company specifically, and I really like the art style. So start networking with some of the artists, some of the previous artists, and some of the members that are in the community that surround that particular project. And do a deep dive, and just get in there, network, have fun, and make friends. That's for me. That is probably one of the number one tips I can provide is don't forget to network.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So taking it to the world of comics again, you have a wonderful website that I want to make sure that we mention as well. But
Thank you.
curious about the work you're doing there, the worlds that you want to create in, and potential collaborations and connections you'd like to make in the world of comics.
So my work in comics has always kind of been there in the background, no matter what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm working for a company, if I'm doing construction work, I'm thinking about comics in my head. It is both fun and kind of a curse at the same time, in that I can't get away from it. But it's
Mm-hmm.
fun, so I enjoy it, which is great. So for me, let's see, for I guess my favorite collaboration would be getting into the tabletop role playing game Shadowrun.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that was kind of a pivotal RPG game that I came across with that and Rifts and other D&D type games. But when I got to Shadowrun, I was kind of hit the wow factor because it really started to push the boundaries of design and characters and storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and I thought it was just absolutely fascinating. And I've been incrementally working towards getting into that project. I'm working currently with a lot of gaming communities like Palladium, Sigil, Pinnacle, and others, creating small content and characters and things like that that they need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But to get in on a project like that and do a super collab, or just to be able to work on that project as a title, would be the dream, right? It'd be, for me, it'd be amazing. It would, bucket list
Yeah,
item.
yeah.
So, but my work in the RPG and the gaming industry really translates pretty well into comics. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
what I've done is I've kind of mixed it all. My love for history, my passion for storytelling, and my need to draw and design some of the most craziest stuff I can think of,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
put it all on paper. And that's kind of where the rubber meets the road with my comic in progress called Celticus. And it's kind of a love letter for all things Celtic, from the ancient Latine Celts in Europe to the Scottish, the Irish, Scandinavians, and elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always wanted to see a story that takes place in a time where I don't get a lot of history on. So I chose the crisis of the third century, Europe. And if you know
Mm-hmm.
anything about that history, it was a tumultuous time, um, just before the fall of the Roman Empire. And so for me, I thought, wow, man, what a crazy time to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do a lot of the history research, you find that there's a lot of stories of heroes and bravery and craziness. Just the onslaught of different peoples coming in and out of areas, and all the cultural clash and things like that. And so for me, it was like a great opportunity to create a story with as much moving parts and as many interesting and diverse characters as I can,
Mm-hmm.
putting it in there without being, too over the top. But I think that having a history base with some cool characters, and then kind of throwing them into more of a fantasy element as it goes forward, and really kind of pushing the bar of fantasy high adventure. Um, it's kind of where I want to take it. I don't want to give away too much, but it's going to get
Yeah.
absolutely loopy.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. So curious about where listeners can kind of follow along and check out this project, the work that you're doing, and kind of see what your style's like.
absolutely. First and foremost, you can see my work, my comic art, my RPG art, all on my website at ronrootart.com.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's kind of the hub. But I'm kind of creating. I'm in the process of creating something different, where I'm using RPGs and comics into my Patreon, and I'm trying to combine them both to where I'm illustrating campaigns for
Hmm.
RPGs. And so it's a work in progress right now, and I'm working closely with Star Anvil Studios. Brandon J. Verhalen is a fantastic creator, writer, and boss. I mean, he's a great friend as well. But he's also kind of helping me with some of these story ideas, and really kind of giving me the reins on a lot of projects. One in particular is the Knights Arcanum RPG. So I've been working on this IP for maybe over 3 years now, and I've
Mm-hmm.
created just about everything: the look, the characters, and things like that, and the design and the overall design. And it's kind of like where He-Man meets Thundercats in a game in comic environment, which is kind of unique and fun and interesting. And it's something that I haven't really seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was talking to Brandon about that, and we were talking like, man, wouldn't it be cool? Because he's keep telling me about some of these campaigns that he's running, and some of the party mishaps and the adventures and things like that. And I was asking, man, wouldn't it be cool to see some of these campaigns illustrated in a sequential format? And he goes, man, that would be awesome. And I haven't really seen a lot of that happening, but I think I've seen D&D produce that comics loosely based on their own characters, but to have
Mm-hmm.
something kind of illustrated a previous campaign, or at least a half a campaign leading up to an adventure that people can take, the fans of comics can read, fans of RPG games can take and apply to their own games and start their adventures. And so I think that's what we're going to try and play around with is that happy balance between RPG, tabletop RPG storytelling, and sequential art storytelling.
Love it. Love it.
So you can see a lot more of Brandon's work at staranvilstudios.com, where he's got multiple projects going on. And then, of course, at my own website at Ron Root Art. You can follow me along on Facebook, Instagram at Ron Root Art, and then my Patreon at Ron Root Art as well.
All right. I'll be sure and link all those so they'll pop up in the video. They'll be in the description, all of those things. Anything that we've missed in the talk through that you want to make sure to mention before we close?
Um, I want to thank you very much, Jason. I really appreciate this opportunity. This is fantastic. I love talking about comics and sequential art and RPGs and things like that, and especially how it could help young artists, young readers, and young RPGists out there. So this is a great opportunity. So thank you very much. And I also
Yeah.
want to send a shout out to Brandon at Starville Studios. That guy's just awesome. If you ever get a chance to play any of those games he's creating, like the Star Anvil Studios RPG game, Knights Arcanum, just super fun. He's a really great guy to work with. And I think some of the content that's going to be coming out in the next year to 2 to 3 years, and we're booked out for the next couple of years on projects and gigs, that comic being one of them.
Mhm.
It's just going to be something new, something you really haven't seen before. And I really hope everyone enjoys it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ron. Always glad to talk with you and glad to share about the projects that are to come as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thanks.